Hello, everyone. This is Alfredo Abate, your current Chicago Oracle Users Group president. Welcome to today's webinar. As an attendee, you'll be in listen-only mode. You can ask questions in the chat window, which we will monitor. All questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. We'll also be streaming live on our YouTube channel, and the recording will be available there to view shortly after the presentation is finished. It's great to be here with you today virtually. For those that are new to the Chicago Oracle Users Group, we welcome you. Traditionally, our group meets between 4 to 6 times per year in various locations around the Chicagoland suburbs for presentations, as well as hands-on workshops by Oracle experts, ACEs, and authors. With the restrictions in place due to COVID, we decided to go virtual to continue to deliver awesome technical content to our members. Today is our 18th webinar in a series of 20 that we'll be holding until November 18th. We're down to just 2 more presentations, believe it or not. So make sure to visit our website and register for those remaining ones. And of course, our website, you can see in front of us, is COUG.us. Our user group runs completely unfunded. Our members don't pay any dues, and our meetings have always been free. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, OAppsNet Partners, for providing the Zoom webinar platform. They are an Oracle Gold partner and systems integrator with specialties in areas of financial business solutions based on Oracle applications, both on premises and in the cloud. They provide services in the areas of AP automation, Apex development, database upgrades, and administration. Next week, don't miss our webinar with Oracle ACE Director Jim Saprinsky on Politics Ain't Beanbag, using Apex, ML, and geocoding in a modern election campaign. And you can register for that on our website right now. Today, we're very excited to have Michelle Hardwick and Leonel Nieto from Salt Lake Community College on our dashboarding tool of choice is Apex. Hi, Michelle, Leonel, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Alfredo, and hello, everyone. Thank you for the invite to speak to all of you today. So I'm going to share my screen quick. All right, so as Alfredo mentioned, we'll be talking about how we chose to use Apex as a dashboarding tool and show you our faculty dashboard that we built in there. So first, a little bit about us. So I'm Michelle Hardwick. I am the Director of Data Science and Analytics for Salt Lake Community College. I also teach with Utah State University, and I'm an Oracle ACE and the president of Utah Oracle Users Group, so based in Salt Lake City in Utah. And I'll have Leonel introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leonel Nieto. I'm the Assistant Director for Business Analytics here at the Salt Lake Community College. Happy to be here.
Okay, and a little bit about our college. So we have 11 campuses located throughout Salt Lake County, and we serve about 55,000 students annually. So we're fairly big in the area. Our data science and analytics team, we see ourselves as the data storytellers throughout the college. So we are involved in basically any data initiative going on, and we help people understand the data that we're seeing so that they can make decisions and improve our student experience. We have 15 team members, and it's split up among 3 teams. We have a data warehouse and official reporting team, the analytics team that Leonel runs, and our data science and research team, which is statisticians and data scientists that are working on some of our more innovative projects. So our agenda today, we want to talk about why we chose to use Apex, how we approached the project, our favorite features, some technical hurdles that we encountered, and then the keys that made the project successful. So jumping right in, why Apex? What were we thinking? It's not really a dashboarding tool. I've never heard of someone doing a dashboard in it. So where did this come from? So first we start with the ask. So we were asked to create a dashboard for faculty that they need data, but that was about all we were told. We weren't told what functionality they needed. We weren't really told what needed to be in it. And as we were looking at this problem, the first thing that scared us about it was that we have 3,000 faculty members, and we have quite a few adjuncts, and so it changes quite a lot from term to term. So really, when we were looking at like licensing on products, that was our biggest constraint, was how do we find the money to pay for a tool that could allow us to have this many users in it? And especially when a lot of those are adjuncts, and again, we're not sure how they'd use it, and if it's worth paying hundreds of dollars for each of them to have a license to a tool that we had in our suite. So our suite was kind of a mess. Well, it still is kind of a mess. We're working on improving it. We have Cognos. That's our main tool. However, the college only bought 80 licenses to Cognos. And we actually wanted last year to start an RFP process to really buy an enterprise BI tool and evaluate which tool that would be and buy enough licenses for more than 80 users across the college. But because of COVID and budget restrictions, that project got put on hold. So we still have Cognos. And I should add, and Cognos' dashboarding capabilities are not very impressive. So even if we had more licenses, I'm not sure we could do what we needed to do in Cognos. Then we have 2 instances of Tableau, because why have just one? The first one is public facing, and it's actually hosted by another institution, the Utah Education Network. So it does not connect to any of our authentication systems, and actually it doesn't even connect to a database. So any data that we upload to it has to be a manual upload to it. So big limitations on that one of how that could work for us. Then we acquired Tableau Online, which is Tableau's cloud version, but we only have 100 licenses in that. And in that one, we could expand and add more users, but it would be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for us to add 3,000 faculty members to that instance. Again, I didn't get budget this year, so COVID. Then our last tool that we have is RStudio Connect, which allows us to build Shiny apps. And that tool, about half of our team knows R and feels comfortable in R, but not many of our traditional dashboard users or developers know R. So some limitations with that tool. But then also we only had 100 licenses. So we keep investing just little bits of amounts of money into all of these tools, and it results in something that doesn't make it possible to develop something for 3,000 users. So this is where we sat down and said, well, what do we do? And Leonel is awesome, and he can figure things out. And so he was like, well, you know, let's look at Apex and see what it can do, because we don't have that license restriction. It can do charts. So maybe that would work for us. So that's when, you know, we were really saying, well, but what's possible? Is it a dashboarding tool, or does it just have like basic charts? And our team had done one other application in Apex at this point. So we were very new to Apex. And on top of that, it was actually a different group. It was our data warehouse group that had currently built an Apex. So Leonel and his team had really never built anything outside of Hello World at this point. And so this was like a huge challenge of thinking, are we getting ourselves in a hole here, but yet we have to deliver something because the college had this as an initiative for that year for us to finish. So we did it. We said, let's build it in Apex and see what it can do. And to be frank, it wowed us. The functionality that we were able to put in it is pretty cool, and we're really proud of it. Sure, there were some limitations, but in general, we were able to accomplish almost everything that we wanted in this dashboard. So how did we approach this project? Everything starts with a plan. Hopefully you have a plan. So first we were thinking about our deliverable. So the deliverable was produce a dashboard, but what you and I might think of a dashboard is probably different than what we were being asked to do. You think of like your car dashboard where it's just one look, you're quick in it. This dashboard I would consider more like a data product or data suite. There's multiple pages to it, a lot of charts, a lot of analysis within it. And I think of it more as a one-stop shop for our faculty members to find data and insights that they need. Also with this, we needed to individualize it to each faculty member. So they should only see their data. And it's really important within our space that faculty have that sense of their data being private to them. We have other restrictions around faculty evaluation and how people are looked at the college, especially if you're under tenure. So that's why the data sensitivity was something we really had to be cautious with. So our requirements gathering was not very helpful. We sat down with some faculty members and I would say, what do you want to see? Well, I want to see demographics of my students. But what will you do with that? And then I want to see what students are struggling. Okay, so does that mean you want to see grades by demographics? Do you want to know what students like are homeless or don't have enough money for a meal? It's struggling in that way. What kind of struggling are you looking for? And they don't really know. The answer would be anything. Just tell me whatever you can. So a lot of this was like Leonel and I sitting down and saying, okay, we kind of know what they do in their job. I mean, I teach for Utah State, so I guess I know more. But interpreting what we see in their role and the opportunities for them into what data we have and how we can help them improve. Sorry, my dog is annoyed. Joys of working from home. All right, so then some of the things that people were asking for sounded cool to them, but just because we can show it, should we really show it? I keep going back to like, I want things to be actionable because I don't think they'll use the dashboard unless they can take actions from it. So from that sense, we were basically asking a lot of, well, what will you do with this? What would you do with that? And trying to iterate on these metrics over time. So here's my slide where we were trying to focus on actions, meaning I don't think that someone will look at this on a regular basis if it's just like, oh, gee whiz, that was good to know. So by focusing on actions that they can take from it, then hopefully they'll be more likely to keep going back to it and actually find this to be a useful tool. So we created an advisory group, and this was representation from across the college, faculty members from each school, and then we had deans and some assistant deans that were involved in this group. And they helped us with driving the requirements of what should be in it. They helped with beta testing and then with the communications and training of our users in helping guide us on how do we release this to this many people and try to be successful. The first step we then did was draw some mock-ups. And I used a tool called Balsamic mock-ups for this, but I also like just drawing on paper with a pencil. That's easy too, but Balsamic makes it look a little bit more professional. This helped outline our ideas. It was our translation of here's what we hear you saying, and here's what we think should be in the dashboard or how this could look in the dashboard. And this also provided alignment up the chain. So this was something I could give to my boss and our vice president, who could then show it off to others and talk about this project that we're working on and the goals of that project. And so this made it a lot more concrete. It wasn't just this fuzzy, we're going to create a dashboard and we don't know what's in the dashboard, but it'll have useful things. This showed them, here's the insights that we're actually trying to get at. And I should add, this wasn't perfect. We had many iterations of our mockups, and it again just keeps evolving as the project goes on, as we figure out what data we have that actually works for things, but then also as we hear things from people. Next, we had to define these metrics, and this was a challenge for us because some of these metrics were things we had never looked at before and never really talked through what would that be. And then also our college has some strategic metrics, and we had to figure out where do we align with those and where do we choose not to align. And if we're not aligning, then what naming do we need on it so that it's really clear that these are separate. We also have a pretty good data governance group at the college and data stewards defined. But as we started getting into the data of some of the metrics, when it's combining multiple things or slicing in different ways, we got into, well, is there a metric steward versus a data steward? Because the data steward might own that raw data, but then the calculation of what's happening or the way you're slicing it, maybe that should be defined by someone else. And we ended up resulting on saying that our data science and analytics team owns the metric definitions, but still we're working with the data stewards on the underlying data that goes into those metrics. And then we would hear, but we're different. Especially with one area of our college, the way that they operate is very different than our traditional credit classes. We have an area that's called our School of Applied Technology, and they have open enrollment where you could show up today and start classes next week, which is not like the traditional term schedule. And then their classes are more competency based, where you could get through the class in 2 weeks really quickly, or you could take maybe a whole year to get through that class. So it's not the traditional undergraduate classes that you and I are probably used to. So we have to account for that, but we had to decide where do we account for that and where do we not? Where do they need to be similar and where can they be different? And then if they are different, how is it different? Do we create different charts for them, a different page for them? What does that mean in this dashboard? We still haven't worked all that out, to be honest. We tried to be agile, but we also decided to have a big bang approach with this project, because we felt that when we're releasing it to that many faculty members, if there's only a few charts or a few things, they might not like get that excited about it and might not look at it. We really felt like that first look had to be like this, wow, I'm so impressed type of feeling. So we decided to be iterative for our advisory group and what we were developing for them to see and give feedback on and test. But really moving to when we went live, we had more of a, well, we did kind of a soft release, but yet big bang soft release. And then our go live communications, when we did go live with this, we had a provost, which is the vice president that's over all of our academics, send out messaging about it. We had supervisors send out messaging, so a very top-down approach. And then we also have newsletters that go out to all of our employees on a weekly basis, and we use those newsletters to help communicate this. Now we've also integrated it into our orientation so that any new faculty member will hear about this dashboard and how to use it. And then we really focused on user training. So one cool feature that I like in Apex that Leonel found is this page tour option, where it can navigate you through the different pieces of the page and give you a little explanation about each of those pieces as you step through it. So that's a quick way for someone to get oriented with the page when they first get on it. We also created a training website with some videos. So walking through each of these charts and how you interpret the charts and the pages on them. And then we also created what we call recipes. So if I'm in the middle of the term, what would I care about on this dashboard? Or if I'm up for tenure evaluation, what should I use in here? So this is another resource for people that learn in different ways to get more oriented with the data and the functionality of the dashboard. And then user training, other user trainings we did, we've done a couple of virtual training sessions that are like hour-long training sessions for faculty members. We've offered one-on-one help where we can really sit down with them and talk through the data that they're seeing and what they should do with that data. And then we're also presenting in some department meetings across the college. So still kind of doing outreach and training on it. So now let's get to show and tell. Let me show you some of our favorite features of this dashboard. So probably my first favorite feature, and my video is not auto starting, PowerPoint fail. So the very first page you come to is really the actions that you should care about today. So it summarizes some of the things you'll see in other parts of the dashboard, but also it's meant to be like, if I only have 2 minutes, this is like, let's say, the dashboard that I look at, this first page. And you can see in this animation, well, the video that there, it's restarting. We have up here what I call the Orange Theory model. of assignment grading. So it's where you compete against yourself, and it shows you here's how quickly you graded in the last 30 days, the 30 days prior to that, and then all of time. So you can try to like beat yourself and your own metrics. When this video restarts again, we'll see another part that I like. Over here on the left, we are flagging students that need the most attention right now. So students that are struggling for multiple reasons. And you can click on this, and that brings up a pop-up that shows you more detail about that student. That's what it's showing there. We also show upcoming assignment submissions. So if I have this assignment that's due in a day and only 4% of my class has turned it in, then I want to reach out to them and say, don't forget about this assignment. And then there's a couple other charts on here too. Then another feature I like is the actions that are available on tables in Apex. So we have these tables where like this one is showing me everyone in my class. It shows me some details about how they're doing in the class. The last time they looked at a page in Canvas, which is our learning management system. Any flags that might be happening in our advising system, and the number of missed assignments for that student, late assignments, how either late or early they're typically turning in their assignments, failed assignments, and then the number of Canvas page views. So again, Canvas is our learning system. So how many pages within this class are they looking at and interacting with? And with this, you can drill into the student for more detail, but also you can click this Actions tab and you can add more columns to this. So maybe I want some more demographics about students. I could add those in. I could build a chart on this data. I can download it. I could even subscribe. So I get this in my inbox maybe every day. So I really like all of this functionality because, as you know, like a lot of users prefer to just have like the data themselves and play with it themselves. And they never like the default view that you give them. So this really allows them to customize things. Also, in the tables, you're able to click on a header and be able to filter those the data better or even sort it. And so it just seems really intuitive to users and how they navigate these tables. Another really important part of our college and part of our mission is that we care about inclusivity and equity of students. So it was really important to us that the dashboard has the ability to disaggregate the data. So if I'm looking at the final course grade distribution for one of my classes, I can also break that down by ethnicity, first generation students. So like, did their parents go to college or are they the first generation to actually come to college? And gender. And that allows us to really see, like, are there discrepancies where certain ethnicities might be struggling with this class in other ways? Or maybe, God forbid, I'm biased in my grading and perhaps I'm more biased to certain types of students. This helps us highlight those inequities. And a feature that I like with Apex is how you can uncheck right here on the legend some of these lines, because we have a lot of ethnicities, and so it gets a little messy on the chart. But again, being able to customize my view and kind of really drill into what I'm specifically trying to look at within my data. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, then correlation is on this dashboard. And I was super nervous when my team said that they wanted to put correlation on this, because I thought, oh my gosh, like faculty members are not going to know. Well, I shouldn't say not all. A lot of faculty members are not going to know what to do with a correlation. There's some faculty members, our stats faculty, that would love that kind of thing. But how do we make this not feel overwhelming to all of our users? And what I really like that the team did with this is using color to help this be a lot more consumable within this metric. So by coloring assignments, well, sorry, I should give you some background on this chart. So this is plotting the average assignment score and their correlation to the final grade that the student got in the class. So is this assignment good at preparing a student to succeed in the class? Or is this like an assignment that's hard for students and not really helping them? So by using colors, we're able to help them look through all of these dots on here. So each one's an assignment. And they can hover to see the name of the assignment. But really use the color to say, okay, these red ones are ones that are difficult and unrelated to that final grade. Maybe it's part of their learning outcomes and something we have to keep in the class, but maybe it's not. And maybe it's one that we could either make easier or try to shift it better so that it's better at helping the student succeed in the class. So this is really a chart that we've gotten a lot of feedback on of faculty members and even our associate deans and deans really liking this chart. And again, that surprised me because I thought this would just be too overwhelming for them. But I think by adding the colors, it made it a lot more consumable. And then I can tie my impact on our college goals through this dashboard. So, we have these goals of we want this many students to graduate with a degree, and we want students to be transferring to a four-year institution. But our faculty members never really, they saw that as like a big number that they really couldn't affect. And this dashboard helps them break down to say, here's the students that you've taught and how they're doing in achieving those goals. So in this faculty member that I'm impersonating, this faculty member had 43% of their students complete SLIC with a degree. And we can compare that to the department average and say, oh, I guess I have room for improvement. I should be maybe coaching my students more to help them succeed. Then a little bit more technical instead of the charts. I had asked the team, we need to be demoing this and training, but I don't want to be showing this sensitive information about our students or our faculty members. So how can we demo this to people, and what solution do we have? And Leonel will get more into this, but he created a demo data mode that gives me masked data. So it uses Star Wars names, but it's actually real students that we're seeing the outcomes for. And being able to integrate the login with the rest of our SLIC logins was important so that our faculty members don't have to remember another login and they don't get confused. And also just for the authentication of knowing who they are and being able to customize the dashboard. So being able to set this up in Apex was one of my favorite features. And Leonel, again, will go into more details of how that worked. Then lastly, I'm really proud of our overall design. I feel like the design that we have within Apex is very clean. There's a lot in here, but yet it's not overwhelming, too much overwhelming. Some people do get overwhelmed still. But I just feel like paying attention to the UI and the design of the dashboard has made this easier for people to consume. So now Leonel will go through some of the technical hurdles that we encountered with this dashboard.
Thanks, Michelle. So the biggest technical hurdle that we had to overcome was just the lack of skill set and experience that we had in Oracle Apex. And as Michelle mentioned earlier, our team had worked in some applications in Oracle Apex, but there was a general lack of experience and just knowing what to do and how to do things in Oracle Apex. So one of the first tasks that we had to do is just to train our team and just get them up to speed in Oracle Apex. We browsed the internet like crazy to try to find promising resources. And we did come up with a couple of resources that were actually pretty easy to digest. And in fact, I highly recommend them. One is a book published in O'Reilly Media. It's a little outdated, but it's got some really good content. It's using an older version of Oracle Apex than what we have on-premise on our instance. That book is called Oracle Application Express, Build Powerful Data Apps, Build Powerful Data-Centric Web Apps. When we were looking at O'Reilly Media at the time, there was not a whole lot of content, but the last time I looked, there's been some more recent stuff. So for those of you who are looking to learn Oracle Apex, I highly recommend O'Reilly Media content. And then there was a YouTube channel that was just really helpful in training some of those users that are more able to learn via visual and follow videos and kind of self-paced stuff. YouTube channel is called JCreagy Database, and there's a lot of content about database design, database development, SQL, but quite a few videos on Oracle Apex as well, with some pretty recent versions of Oracle Apex as well. Let's see. So one other technical hurdle that we had to overcome had to do with just the number of uses that we were targeting the application for. Not necessarily with, we were not really worried with users logging in concurrently and overwhelming the system, but more so with how do we get the information that we need this user who happens to be logged in. So we had to really think through the problem to develop a dashboard that was personalized for the user or for the faculty member. And so in using the authentication method in Oracle Apex, we developed some procedures, some PL SQL procedures to query the database for information about the user that was logged in. For those of you who are experienced with Oracle Apex, you know that Oracle Apex is going to give you a variable for each user that is authenticated, called the app user. So that became kind of like the driving parameter across all of our queries. We also then collected more information, such as the full name of the user, what department they worked in, and also unique identifier for that user so that we can have a fully customized experience for that user. That also allowed us to create a method for impersonating users, because once we knew who the user was and we had the information about that user, we needed to figure out a way for us as developers to develop and test the dashboard. And since none of us actually teach in the college, we didn't have any data to see as we were developing the dashboard. So being able to adjust those parameters and impersonate a faculty member really allowed us to kind of see the development of the dashboard with semi-real data. And I say semi-real data because we were not developing in the production database. We were developing in our development database. And some of the data is pretty close parity with the production, but it's not exactly production database. So again, we created to be able to impersonate a faculty member, we created a table that we called the alias table. And anytime a developer logged into the faculty dashboard, a PL SQL procedure will look up this table. And if the developer existed in that table and it had an alias, we would use the alias instead of the actual developer's username and parameters to query the database. That in turn also made it very easy for the advisory group to be able to see the development of the dashboard as well. We had some members of the advisory group who were not faculty members per se. They're not teaching classes, or were just not teaching classes at that particular term in which we were developing. So we were able to allow them to impersonate another faculty member, whether it be one of their colleagues or somebody who granted permissions, so that they could see the development of the dashboard and provide feedback. Another approach to this could have been that we developed test data, but there was a lot of things to think about when developing test data. We were thinking about assignment due dates, assignment scores, student enrollments, faculty courses. So there was just a lot of variables that we would have had to think through to develop some test data to develop on. This method of impersonating faculty members was a little easier to do in the short term, but there are some shortcomings to that. For example, if we are developing during term transitions or at the beginning of the term, there's not going to be a whole lot of data to look at because there hasn't been any assignments created yet. There hasn't been any scores for students assigned yet. Enrollments may be too low to be able to see anything significant. So we had to kind of do a little bit of hit and miss with impersonating different faculty throughout the college to be able to develop some of these features in the dashboard. The other hurdle that we had to overcome had to do with performance. And as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about a large number of users with lots of data. And we have some faculty who have been at the college for more than 5 to 10 years. So they have a lot of historical data that we wanted to query and show them so they can see trends about how they're teaching their courses and if there is any improvement that they can leverage. First, we tried to build the queries on the dashboard, querying the fact tables directly. And that turned out to be a huge issue because some of those fact tables can be pretty large. And we also had to join from one fact table to another fact table, in some cases 2 or 3 fact tables for one query to get, for example, course enrollments and grades. So that was something that we couldn't keep up, or at least in the long-term sense of the project, it wasn't going to be feasible. So we had to develop a different strategy. Another strategy that we tried was to cache things on the Oracle Apex front end. But caching was not going to work very well because, again, we want to show personalized, individualized information for the person who happens to be logged in. So we ended up settling with materialized views. And that was something that we can really leverage across the dashboard. We tried to kind of figure out what is the unit of analysis that we want to do on, say, this page of the faculty dashboard. And so we packed as much information as we could into that materialized view and then built it out and then made it available for refreshes on the database. And that really helped us with performance of the dashboard. But we still had to kind of keep an eye on those queries that were taking a little longer than, say, half a second or a second to render, because any second mattered when it came to rendering some of the charts and some of the pages of the dashboard. We didn't want to compromise the user experience at all. So anything that was taking a little longer than, say, a second, we were just going to scrap and redesign it and figure out a different approach to it. The other issue that we had with regards to just being new in general to Oracle Apex and not knowing enough about what's happening behind the scenes or under the hood is the fact that our connection pool maxed out. So for those of you who are experienced with this, you may know more about this connection pool. I don't. At that time, we didn't know what was going on, but when we first deployed our dashboard to production, we quickly ran into this issue. We kept getting errors of resources not being able to render or not being able to find resources such as style sheets, images, and any file that was hosted on the Tomcat server. So we had to do a lot of research, spend a lot of time on the web, figuring out what was going on. Our DBA had no clue what was going on because this is it's an Apache Tomcat server issue. It's not necessarily a database issue, as far as I know. We ended up figuring out that we needed to get the logs of the Tomcat server. And we kind of just sat there and read through the logs, compared dates of when the error was occurring, how it was occurring. And we figured out that there was a connection pool max out error being shown on those logs. So next, we had to figure out, well, how do we fix that? Because the deployment of the Oracle Apex instance was a default deployment. So we had to figure out how do we fix that issue where we can increase the connection pool parameters. So once we figured out what parameters we needed to adjust, we then had to convince our OIT department, our information technology department, that this was the issue that needed to be fixed, and this is how it could be fixed. That took some back and forth of explaining and trying it out on that development instance. And once we got to figure out, everything is working very well since then. So no issues since then. You go to the next slide. Lastly, one of the things that kept kind of bugging us throughout the whole development process was when we wanted to use multi-select filters. One of the cool things and pretty handy features about the dashboard is the ability to refresh the data according to some filter parameters, say, for example, a specific term or a specific course or a specific set of students. But we had a hard time figuring out, okay, when we have a multi-select filter, how do we implement that into our query so that it filters a query based on what's selected on that filter? And so if you have any experience with Apex, you'll know that when you have a multi-select filter, like in this case, I'm showing a term filter, the items of that filter are going to be kind of lumped together into a string separated by columns as shown on that screenshot. So the first attempt that we did on this was to use regular expressions to kind of parse out that string and throw it into our queries. But using regular expressions compromised our performance on the query. It just slowed it down quite a bit. And we're talking about 3 or 4 different filters that all were using a regular expression to parse out the string that was being returned. It took us a while to figure out that Oracle Apex has a built-in feature called Apex String Split. And that just turned out to be a saving function because we used it across everything that was a multi-select filter. And it just quickly splits that string by a specific delimiter and returns individualized values that you can query, that you can use in your queries. So that took us a while to figure it out, but when we figured it out, it was just a huge benefit, and it really improved the performance of those multi-select filters. The last thing that we had to kind of figure out is using JavaScript and HTML. So we knew that using JavaScript and HTML would really enhance the experience of the users, and it could really just enhance the dashboard as a whole, because it's really easy to use JavaScript and HTML in Oracle Apex. But we wanted to be really cautious because we don't have the skill set in our team to adequately use JavaScript and HTML. And also, we are concerned what happens if we have to update the application, or if the person that is doing all this JavaScript stuff leaves our team, or something happens, gets hit by a bus, whatever. We just wanted to make sure that if we did use JavaScript, that we wanted to teach some of our analysts and developers to understand some of the basics of JavaScript. And our analysts and developers are really good with SQL, but JavaScript was just something that was different to them, and that they hadn't had to work up until that point because we were using pretty much no-code platforms such as Tableau and Cognos. But again, JavaScript was one of those things that if we used it, it was going to be a huge benefit to the user experience and the UI of the dashboard as a whole. The feature that Michelle mentioned earlier about demo data is one JavaScript function that is basically saying if there is a user, if there is a name of an individual in this specific string, find that name and replace it with a random Star Wars character's name. And so that was something that we were able to just easily implement without a whole lot of JavaScript code. And our developers were trained on it, and they understand what that code is doing. So that in the future, if we ever need to update to a different version of Apex or something needs to be changed and modified, everybody knows what's going on. So those are the main hurdles that we had. Nothing significant. It was just really a learning curve that we had to go through, but everything ended up turning out very well.
Thanks, Leonel. Oops, sorry. I keep going the wrong direction on slides. I should have given you control. I'm struggling apparently. Okay, so last we want to talk about the keys for success. Like, what were the lessons that we learned in all of this? And there were many lessons, some that we've already alluded to. So the first was really, how do we move from information to actionable? There was an advisory group meeting where Leonel and I presented. It might have been our mock-ups. It might have actually been like some of the first initial renderings of the dashboard. And I remember as they were leaving the room, I heard faculty members say, "This is really interesting. I just don't know when I'd use it." And I'm like, oh no, like that's exactly not what we want to hear, because I want this to be something that they'll see good value in, and we're putting all this work into it. So I want it to be something they use a lot. So that was really when Leonel and I went back to the drawing board and said, okay, so they found this interesting, but what does this mean in the context of what they do? And because our faculty members maybe are not the most data literate, they couldn't translate to really tell us, I need a chart that does X, Y, and Z. So we really had to rack our brains to translate, what are we truly hearing from them, and what does that mean? And I think that we did a good job, and we got to a point where they have actionable things, but now that we've even rolled this out and have a lot more users, we've gotten some really good feedback of things that are oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We should add that too. So we're learning, they're learning, and I'm sure we'll continue to evolve the dashboard over time. Also, finding advocates is really important. So as we tried to roll this out, our college has like a really top-down communication method. And we thought, well, as long as our provost, that vice president, is pushing for this, then people will use it. But it's not the only thing he was pushing for. We also had to compete with all of the distractions going on with COVID when we released this. So we released it in June. And that was after our college had already transitioned to being fully online. But there were still, a lot of things going on for faculty members at that time as they're trying to move their classes and adapt to this new learning method. Well, new for some of them, learning method. So we did like soft release in June, and then in August for really the fall term starting, when we have more people on campus, that's when we were really pushing for this dashboard. And we found in that time that there were some people who I would really call advocates who were really speaking up about the cool features in the dashboard and how much they like to use it. And I feel like they've gotten more people on board to use it than we did from our initial communications. So I didn't realize that these people would be advocates from the start. I wouldn't have handpicked them, but they kind of came out of the woodwork. And now I'm leveraging them so that they continue to spread that message, the peer-to-peer messaging about it. So also, as I alluded to, we had data literacy challenges. So data literacy, kind of similar to like literacy as you think about reading, I consider data literacy the ability to read, write, analyze, and communicate about data. And when we're thinking of like the levels that people are at our college, there's all different levels. There's some faculty members who are big advocates for using data and others who are still just starting. So when we started thinking about our training, we realized that we're not only training on the functionality of like, here's where to click. If you want to download your data, you click actions, you go to download, but also like, what does this data tell me and what do I do with that? Like, if I see this, what should I do? And that's where some of the recipes came from in our training documents, and some of the conversations that we have with them, especially the one-on-one conversations of really looking at their data and saying, well, here's what I'm seeing from that. Here's how I would interpret this. We also contemplated an easy button on the dashboard. So if you do not feel very comfortable with analytics, maybe your first view is like a pretty toned down, and we take out the correlations and take out some of the charts that might be more complex. And instead, there's more like an advanced feature for the people that are above and beyond where like the lower level, let's say, of data literacy is. So giving them the ability to kind of tiptoe into looking at data and build up their confidence in using the dashboard. And then once they're ready, they could see more advanced analytics. We didn't actually implement that because that sounded kind of challenging, but it is something we're still considering as we try to get people on board, because we have heard feedback of there's a lot in there. It's really cool, but it's overwhelming. And then the recipes that I mentioned before. So the recipes are really saying, if this is what you're trying to do, here's what I would look at. So helping them pinpoint more, you're all database folks, so more like an index to say, all right, you want this, here's where to go for that. And then both Leonel and I talked about this, but skill sets was probably something we should have taken into account when we first decided to use Apex. We, again, had some knowledge of Apex on our team. We had a consulting firm that was helping us use Apex, but we never really sat down to say, okay, well, we have a team of analysts, and these are people who are good at talking about data, but they're really not a full stack developer. And if we're going to develop a dashboard like this, the part I didn't foresee was now everyone else wants a dashboard that does that same functionality. So now our advisors want a dashboard that has a table where they can download the data. And now this is proliferating where it might become our standard dashboarding tool unintentionally because they like the features. Also in that, I think we didn't know the capabilities of Apex out of the box versus what we'd have to customize. And perhaps from the beginning, we could have done a better evaluation of how much are we asking for that like is easy to do in Apex and a team of analysts could do versus what are we asking for, like things that are really above and beyond, and we just need to say, nope, we can't do that unless we truly get a developer and someone that understands programming more than data. Then another lesson learned is that trust in the data is really important. And we learned as we went on with this project that we need to be very transparent in how we're calculating data and where it's coming from. There were a lot of conversations that ended up happening with some of our advisory group members of, well, I don't believe that number. Where are you getting it from? What does it truly mean? And if we can have those definitions or the calculations right up front, maybe not on the first page of the dashboard, but something you could click or hover to get to, then we're being transparent and really clear about what it's showing. And then frequency of data refreshes is important. Our data coming from our learning management system is currently lagging about 24 to 48 hours. So we've had faculty members say to us, well, I graded that assignment and it's saying I still hadn't. So, is this old data? And we put on the dashboard some refresh dates, but it's in smaller text and they're kind of overlooking it from what we're seeing. So we are working on getting more real-time data refreshes for those key bits of information where we're hearing from faculty that they really do need this to be more real-time. And then as with most projects, having institutional support is really important. So, apparently I didn't change my bullet points on this. Ignore the bullet points, I'll just talk to them. So with that, like having our cabinet members excited about this project, giving us the bandwidth for the project, supporting the advisory group, helping us with it, all of that was really important in the rollout of this. And then I added this slide, and Leonel doesn't know I added it. I added it at the last minute because he would blush that I'm talking about this, but Leonel's awesome. And his team has been able to accomplish really good things. And I think part of that is our team culture. We are developing a team culture of really wanting to solve a problem, no matter how hard it is or what challenges we might overcome in trying to help our students. And having that passion on our team is really important, that everyone's like wanting to learn and wanting to get better. And you can ask them to do it in this new random tool that they just heard about a few months ago, and they don't bat an eye and they say, okay, let's figure it out. So I really appreciate Leonel and his team for taking this project on. So with that, any questions for us?
I don't see any questions in the chat window. One comment from Jim. I'm not sure if the both of you saw it.
I need to pull up the chat window. Jim, I could see you doing that with the tennis balls. Just for the fun of it. All right, if there's no other questions, I'll turn it back over to you, Alfredo. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk about what we've done.
Well, thank you both. That was a really awesome presentation. Just, as I present a little bit on Apex myself, it just goes to show you the power of what could be with that and the cost savings, which I love myself, especially when coming from an OBIE world and knowing how much those licenses cost, or even Cognos for that matter. But yeah, so thank you both. We really appreciate you guys, the both of you, speaking to our group. Hopefully the next time it will be in person. But yeah, for anybody else, in case you missed the beginning, next week we have Oracle ACE Director Jim Saprinsky on Politics Ain't Beanbag, which will have Apex with a little sprinkle of ML and geocoding in a modern election campaign. So you can register for that now, and we'll see you at the same time of the week and same time at noon next Wednesday. Thank you both, and everyone have a great day.